And we would have to learn how to be present. We'd have to learn how to connect with our authentic self. We'd have to learn how to work with this body and this mind. But if we did that, we would have access to something beyond what we could imagine.
Hello, everybody. My name is Anne with an E. And
Hi, Anne.
I'm coming to you today from the North Shore of Nova Scotia, Canada. My inquiry for today is surrounding the idea that addiction is addiction is addiction. Doesn't matter what it is, it's addiction. And further to that, me being in the beginning stages of recovery, focusing strictly on one area of addiction is perhaps allowing other areas to rear their ugly head, as it were. And I just like to kind of get some input on that. The do's, the don'ts, the rights, the wrongs.
Thank you so much for this inquiry, which is relevant, I feel, to every human being, no matter who you are. So there's a lot to unpack here as we look at this concept of addiction. Let's begin with a definition. So for me, addiction is any behavior that you continue despite it bringing negative consequences into your life. So there's the addiction based upon the continuation of something that's harming, and that's engaging in a harming behavior. In this case, we're talking really about towards oneself. Others may be involved in our addiction, but we're really talking about a self-harming behavior. From this definition of addiction, we can begin to expand our view, our perspective beyond drugs and alcohol. So I think if you speak to most people and you just mention the word, if you said to somebody on the street, well, I have a cousin who's, a real addict, what they're going to think is drugs, or they're going to think alcohol. But they're not going to necessarily think, oh, you mean that your cousin is a human being dealing with the spectrum of difficulty and challenges and engaging in behaviors that are not the best behaviors in order to navigate through their human difficulty. But that's what I mean when I talk about, oh, my cousin's an addict. It really means that person is in what I refer to as the frequency of addiction. The frequency, this vibration, if you will, through literally the body and the cells of the body, the mind, the way we show up in the world, the frequency of addiction, which means that someone is stuck in a force field which has certain characteristics to it that bring on certain experiences in life which are characterized as painful, difficult, and one stays in the pattern and remains in that force field until a major shift takes place, where in order for them to have an awareness, an awakening, and they realize, okay, something has to happen to change this. This isn't working anymore. But I believe most people in the world are struggling in the way that I'm talking about. So let's just unpack that. So let's say the big six addictions that human beings get caught in. Drugs. So we're talking about legal, so over-the-counter, medically prescribed over-the-counter drugs. That's a place we can become addicted, for sure. And we all are aware of that acutely now in this day and age. Also, we're talking about drugs that are not legal, but which one can procure. The opiates, when you're buying opiates on the street, or cocaine, or methamphetamine, or anything that might be sold outside of sort of medically prescribed circumstances. So I say to people laughingly, sometimes in our retreat workshops and the classes, do you think the United States has a drug problem? And people, practically burst out laughing because, the size of our drug problem is so epic, it can almost not be calculated. We have a massive, massive drug problem in our country and across the world. Of course, it's not limited to the US. Then you have alcohol. Alcohol is our pressure release valve for our society. It's there at births, it's there at deaths, it's there at all the rites of passage, it's there at sporting events, it's there at the Olympic Games. Everywhere people gather, we're going to find alcohol. It's so ubiquitous in our society that we've all bought into the very strange belief that it's normal to intoxicate ourselves. Like that's normal to take a known poison and intoxicate ourselves. That's how some people, relax. That's how many people, spend their time after work or every evening for their lifetime. And so that's a strange habit to have taken on as a society, but we do that. So this is a place where some people get really, really stuck behind alcoholism, drugs, alcohol. Then you have food addiction, emotional eating and binging, bulimia, anorexia, all the food related challenges that we have, obesity. Where does food addiction lead? Medical problems, major medical problems like heart disease, obesity, childhood obesity, like, oh my God, type 2 diabetes. These are lifestyle diseases. But in the treating of these diseases at the level of the American Medical Association and Western medicine, we don't look at these as addiction related diseases. We look at them as medical conditions. That is to say, we treat the medical condition and the problems that the condition brings into the human being's life. But we don't ever look at, seemingly, we don't look at, hey, where did this come from? You're drinking 64 ounces of Coca-Cola a day and you've got type 2 diabetes. Guess what? We're going to lock you in a room where you can't get to your 64 ounces of Coca-Cola. We're going to do that for 30 days and we're going to reverse some of these conditions. But no, it's like, okay, well, a doctor will certainly suggest you need to improve your diet. But it doesn't go in many cases beyond that. And what's going to happen to that person is drugs. They're going to be put on drugs. And they're not going to be encouraged to change their life. So I also say to people, do you think we have a food problem in the United States of America? And people, of course, that's also a laughable rhetorical question. So you have drugs, alcohol, food, and then the people addictions, relationship disorders, codependency, sex addiction, the ways that people struggle in their relationships with other people, which of course is really a struggle in their relationship with themselves. But it extends out. And so this is a very, very painful form of addiction that doesn't get included in this discussion of addiction very often. And then beyond the people addictions, you have your money-based addictions. So we have gambling, of course, gambling addiction, a really big problem. We have shopping addiction, constantly wanting to buy something. Really, it's one of the most celebrated addictions in our country. And then you have debt, the addiction of being in debt. One of the fastest growing 12-step programs in our country is Debtors Anonymous, DA. And people have woken up to the idea that, carrying the burden of debt is an addiction and a real problem. And who would want to remain in that? So those are money-based addictions. And of course, we'll add workaholism in there, another celebrated addiction in our society, because it's related to achievement and career and money and abundance. And so there's also that. Then you get to the sixth, and the sixth is technology. I like to think that what we're doing right now is a positive use of technology, and that people will engage in this podcast and other, positive forms of media in a way that can enhance their life and not distract them from their pain and not distract them from their lives and not have negative consequences upon their relationships, et cetera, et cetera. But we know that technology is a massive problem, and it is changing the way we are in the world. It's changing the way we think and the way we act. It is really hitting painfully hard on our ability to focus and our ability to concentrate on things beyond these quick fixes and these quick dopamine hits of Instagram and TikTok and all of it. So these are the big six. These are the places that human beings get tripped. So in your inquiry, we're wanting to explore, is addiction across, the board. I speak about the frequency of addiction, which underlies all of these addictions. I would say the mechanism is the same. Something underneath all of those behaviors, when they become addictive for us and we get into that pattern, when you go back, you realize, wow, I do the behavior because I'm uncomfortable in some way, because I'm in pain in some way, because I'm too excitable, because I'm not good enough, because I'm not feeling connected to my purpose, because I had a really shitty conversation with someone that I love, or something terrible happened in my past, either at the hands of someone else, or I did something terrible in my past and I have so much shame about it that I can't get over these feelings. I can't get over the guilt of how I am and how I perceive myself. And all of these stories you see fuel these addictive behaviors. And then there's more subtle addictions like negative thinking, self-doubt, procrastination, and resentment. I call them addictions because they're behaviors you continue despite bringing a negative consequence into your life. So for me, my direct experience is that I initially got sober, abstinent from drugs and alcohol, because I struggled so badly with those forms of addiction. Terrible, 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 painful experience with drug addiction and alcoholism. And I had the great good fortune of working through the 12 steps, like really earnestly working to understand myself, my patterns, to connect with a greater intelligence, to elevate my thinking and my awareness, and to put myself around other people who are interested in those same things, and to create environments for myself that were positive and uplifting environments to be in. These were my efforts in early recovery. I didn't know that at the time, but as I look back, that's what I was doing. And then the most interesting thing took place. I became liberated from the craving to do drugs and alcohol. I no longer desired to use drugs and alcohol anymore. The actual desire left. And that was an extraordinary thing to experience for someone like me who had been so caught up and so dedicated to using drugs and alcohol that it was a part of my being, it was a part of my mind, my body, a part of my spiritual approach, a part of my community, a part of the way I interacted with people, a part of the way that I interacted sexually and in relationships. It was tied up and enmeshed in every aspect of my life. But there I was in recovery, delivered this unbelievable gift. I no longer desire drugs and alcohol. I'm free. And then I noticed something took place. Over the next 5 to 10 years, my awareness would grow of patterns in my life, which had been there my entire life, which needed to be worked out. Patterns like these other big six that I was just describing. And I just sort of saw myself as a person who wanted to so badly to be in a deep long-term relationship with somebody who didn't have whatever it must have taken to do that. And I was not comfortable in relationship. And I was also not ultimately comfortable being a single man either. The common denominator between me being single or me being in relationship, of course, is me. So I started to realize, wow, I have a difficulty in this area. I have difficulty in understanding my relationship to money, how to be in the world, how to make money, how to express myself, how to be free, how to be empowered, how to be creative. I had struggled with my breath and my body and my desires for this body to be healthy. I can tell you that because I smoked cigarettes for those first sort of 10 years. And that's so contrary to my spirit. So I was doing something that I was in conflict with every day. That's an addiction. And so I had to work out my codependency. I had to grow up in so many ways emotionally. I had to wake up in so many ways spiritually. And my addictive behavior, the frequency of addiction didn't stop because drugs and alcohol were removed from my life. But that was the first and most necessary thing that had to take place in order for me to do the deeper work that would ultimately set me free. I met my teacher, as you all know, probably if you've read my book, Recovery 2.0, and I know at least some of you have. I met my teacher, GuruPrem, an American born man who took on the Sikh faith, who's a yoga teacher and extremely bright light in this world, an amazing human being. I met him and he gave me a vision of healing my life and healing addiction. That it was no more once an addict, always an addict. It was heal your life, heal these aspects of yourself. Learn how to move energy through the body in the way we do in our yoga. Learn how to work with the breath. Learn how to calm your mind through meditation. Learn how to interact better with yourself, your body, the planet, the food you eat, and the people around you. Work on this. And he helped me. He gave me this vision of a recovery that was complete. And in this vision of recovery, it wasn't like you're an alcoholic, you're a sex addict, you're a gambler, oh, you're in debt, you struggle with food. It was you're a human being on a path of discovery. And we're all the same on that path in the sense of we all want to learn and move towards our next step. We want to access a better version of ourselves. We want to become fully present, fully centered, and we want to set ourselves free and live a fulfilling life. And so in that vision of addiction, there was no separation between alcoholic, drug addict, sex addict, gambling addict, food addict. It was an energy and that needed to be dealt with by all of us, by all human beings. And we would have to learn how to be present. We'd have to learn how to connect with our authentic self. We'd have to learn how to work with this body and this mind. But if we did that, we would have access to something beyond what we could imagine. We'd have a greater access to spontaneity and creativity, health and wellness, connection and love. In Recovery 2.0 meetings, the format is universal. We don't categorize addiction. And we don't even necessarily require that somebody be, quote, identify with being an addict to be in our meetings. You just have to want to get unstuck. You just have to want to move forward in your life and experience the best version of yourself. And so we don't make that categorization. Anybody's welcome who's had history with anything that could be considered addiction, or if you're struggling in a relationship or you're struggling with your thinking and being stuck in something, you're welcome here. So what do you think? What comes up for you as you hear that answer? Does that help you with this inquiry of understanding addiction from a broader perspective? What comes up for you, Anne?
Indeed, Tommy. Thank you. So what I'm hearing is, as long as I'm moving forward and doing the work, it will come.
Yes. And when you say it will come, can you describe what you imagine is coming and what it will feel like when it gets here?
The immediate response for me is calm.
Okay.
It's that deep breath that gets right full, before the exhale begins again. It's calm.
So this calm that you speak of, you've experienced it before?
I have.
Under what circumstances?
Probably the most obvious would be when I gave birth to my daughters. It was calm.
just afterward.
Yeah.
Probably not while you were giving birth.
Oh, heavens, no.
I'm guessing.
No, but the interesting part there that actually just came into my mind is I was clean.
Yes. And what a gift.
Yeah.
What an incredible gift. And so the term singleness of purpose comes to my mind. It's very often that we're looking for that level of focus into something so singular. Our mind is absolutely pristinely focused on that. And certainly childbirth would be one of those moments where you get to have that singular focus, and then the relief and the release of having given birth and the presence of a new being, which at that moment is a pure embodiment of love. And all that you've done to get there, your 10 months of work and the previous work of your entire life leading up to that moment. What an accomplishment and what a moment to experience calm.
Mm-hmm.
And that we don't want you to have to give birth again and again and again to re-experience this calmness that you spoke of. So it's available to each one of us every day, in every breath, in every moment. And for me, it's been a subtractive model of it's not that I necessarily need to add anything more to my life. It's more, I need to let go of the things that have gotten in the way of my calmness and my presence. And one of the great teachings of my life was to understand relaxation as simply letting go of that which no longer serves, the unnecessary. Letting go of the unnecessary brings you to a place of relaxation by definition, every time. So if we can just let go of the unnecessary thoughts, the attachment to those thoughts, the attachment to emotion, the attachment to our stories, we will settle into this beautiful place of presence, just like you settled right in there after you gave birth. So we give birth to our new presence in each moment, in each breath, and we practice that each day. And then we try to be that present as we go out into the world. Easier said than done, but it's a practice for a reason. So thank you, Anne, so much.
Thank you.
Yeah, grateful for this inquiry.